Well, hello everyone, and we are going to go over mixed media art materials. I'm going to start trying to remember to do actual introductions after we start recording the meeting, because we've talked about it and then the recording doesn't happen. It's weird. So today I am going to go over the core things that I use. There's a lot. It's very important in this class and in all of the classes that you understand that use what you have at home. Okay. Always, that is always the answer. All of the exercises that we do and things like that can be modified for using things at home. However, I do have a lot of technical knowledge about mixed media supplies. So it's always good for us to go over a refresher. Some of the things that we're going to cover today is the different types of acrylic paint. Is it? Oh yeah. Is the different types of acrylic paint, different situations you might use them. We're going to go over gessoing your paper, glazing, water additives, and then we're going to hit the water soluble materials. It's going to be a little bit of a watercolor demo. It's going to be some water soluble pencil demo, graphite.
Are you going to use coffee today?
Coffee. Actually, you reminded me that I have not properly prepared my coffee. Give me 1 second.
She uses coffee. So cool.
Leah, since I couldn't get the colors right, I put it on the WhatsApp.
Okay, let me take a look at it right now. I'm also trying to do 2 other things at the same time. Here, hold on.
That's called multitasking.
Yeah, I'm trying and failing.
I am going to use coffee today. We're going to go over some coffee, and we're also going to hit a couple of exercises at the end of class so you don't feel like you didn't get to play at least a little bit. Whenever you are wanting to experiment with a new art supply, a couple of things to take into consideration, especially with mixed media art, is that it works well with what you're already using. You can use oil pastels on top of acrylic paintings, but understand that they have to be the top layer. Oh, how weird. It's making my computer like auto. Is it too bright or too dark? I'm going to do this and see if that helps it. Okay. That's right there is good. Thank you. Thank you for the light. Oh man. So things are great. Okay. Sorry everybody for the rough start. No matter how prepared I get, it is always a rough start.
That happens to me always.
Yeah. So with acrylic paint, you can use anything that's water soluble. What that means is that water modifies it. There still is intelligent layering that you should be doing with your materials. What I mean by that is if you use watercolor as your first 2 layers, and then try and use a water-based material on top of your watercolor after your watercolor is dried, it's going to modify the watercolor, because watercolor, anytime water is added to it, is modified. What that means is if you have a beautiful blue splotch and you love the way it looks and you're just trying to add another translucent layer, but you think you're going to do acrylic glazing on top, you're going to ruin the underlayer. So there is I do have some, I wouldn't call them hard and fast, but I've got some loose rules. But we're going to start with acrylic paint because it's the most work. Jean, I know that you use acrylic paint a lot. Do you have a brand particularly that you use?
Well, I just use whatever, the Blick brand, which it works fine for me, but I hear it's not good. It's not archival. It won't last.
It isn't. And student grade is fine. This is a student grade, Amsterdam. And one of my favorite paints that I used for a really long time was a student grade Daler Rounding. It's accessible usually, it's affordable. And when you're experimenting, that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
If your acrylic is like a heavy acrylic or a high flow acrylic, is it just a regular, just acrylic in a tube like this?
It's just like that.
So for those who don't know, acrylic actually comes in a variety of weights. This is actually kind of a market that Golden, the brand, has just made a ton of money in. Every time they refigure out a new weight for acrylic paint and then they can mass produce it. I consider, like what we're talking about, like the student grade acrylic paint to be a medium weight paint. Let me show you what that means. So I add just some notes. I'm working in this pan. This is like an enamel acrylic pan. It's got watercolor down here, which will slightly mix with my acrylic, but won't be the end of the world. I like to mix my acrylic and make it, I would say, 2 parts acrylic, 1 part water. It's important to know as we talk about watercolor and acrylic that the level of water that you have in there does actually matter. So your basic mid-weight acrylic is soft. It's like butter. It's like painting with butter. This is a toothier paper. What does that mean? Well, it means that it's got a texture on it. I like a toothier paper personally. This is 140 pound. I always suggest that your paper is never less than 140 pound. I'm going to talk to you about some of my sketchbooks, and some of them are not. I'm going to show you why it matters what the weight of your paper is. Sometimes I can be lulled to buy a beautiful sketchbook, even though I know it's not a good weight for me, just because it's pretty. It's like having a pretty girlfriend, even though she's not smart. I grew out of that. I don't have that problem now. My girlfriend is pretty and smart.
Oh, that's awesome. And behind you.
So this is a medium bodied paint. I like to use Amsterdam acrylics for my, what I call like your slush acrylics. They're going to be my first layers. They're going to be things that I'm experimenting with. I am currently using just an Art Smith basic paintbrush. You can buy very nice paintbrushes, but know if you're going to destroy them. I'm going to destroy them. I'm going to be irresponsible. I'm going to leave them in water overnight. I'm not going to clean them as often as I should. All of these things come into consideration when you're using things. So if this is a medium bodied paint, there is a light bodied paint. This is what's called a high flow acrylic. People love the high flow acrylic. You don't have to add water to it, and it's already kind of liquidy. See how liquidy it is? And if you're like me and you paint with a spatula or some kind of flat edge, this is the primo. Also, let's take a look at something. This is a great opportunity when we talk about the difference between student grade and professional grade. So can you see how different the pigment spread is on the high flow acrylic as compared to this one up here? You can see how you can see the brush marks. You can see that even in some of the more translucent spots, the pigment in this one is just a better pigment. As Jean explained, some student grade paints aren't what they call archival. What does archival mean? Well, we don't actually know a lot about acrylic paint yet, really, because it hasn't been around for the number of years that oil-based paints have been around. I think we have 150 years-ish with it. But what it in theory means that if somebody has it well framed with nice glass that has a little bit of light reflectiveness, it should last for a really long time. If you are an artist who plans on being super famous, where your work is in people's lifetime collections, you might want to consider archival materials. Even now, even if you're learning now with this. So this is our high flow. I have high flow without a nozzle and high flow with a nozzle. That isn't the determining factor. For a long time, I thought that it was. So you can have a heavy bodied paint, meaning that it's really thick. This is golden. This is my favorite color we're about to dig into. Oh, look, I haven't even opened this yet. I don't know.
Break the seal.
Break the seal. So I have this in 2 versions. So I have it in this little tube, this little tub, which is my preference. And I have it in a tube. And I like the little tub just for ease on scooping things out, things like that. It's just a heavier paint. It's gonna, this one in particular, this is a translucent paint. It's got a light fastness of 1, which means that it's made specifically to be translucent. I don't have to, this is without water. And you can add water to it. I think personally, it's been my experience that I don't like to add water to the paints that are too low on the translucence scale, because it just kind of waters them out and it doesn't look nice. This is going to dry heavier and thicker. So when I tell you that Golden has made some serious cashola by creating new, brighter, more exciting versions of things, they have come out with this new matte. Okay. So they've taken what I would call a medium bodied paint and they've added chalk to it, is what they have put in their new recipe to make it special. So when it dries, it has a matte texture instead of a shiny texture. I like the weight of it. That's where you find me happy with the new stuff. What I will tell you is that I have this in a high flow matte as well, and it comes in the same bottle that looks like this. I think it just, the chalk in it junks up the nozzle and it doesn't work as well. So I use a lot of scrapers for my work. I have this very cute, adorable little catalyst. I have this new one. Look at this bad boy. Guess what it came with? It came with a Nutrisystem food scale that we got because my partner has a fancy espresso machine and she needs to weigh out her coffee. But man, it's a beaut. Okay, so this paint has chalk in the paint, and it's gonna not absorb, it's gonna absorb light instead of reflect light when it dries. And that's really the difference when you want to talk about shiny versus matte, is what happens when the light goes on top of it. As I talk about the layers of how you might want to layer your paints, and when you're thinking about with abstract art, some of your most important decisions are knowing how your materials act so that you can know how to layer them. This matte paint is beautiful on top of a couple of layers of super high flow translucent painting. Leah just spoke about painting with coffee. Speaking of layering, this is my trusty little jar, never going to drink it because it's instant, fair trade, organic coffee. It's freeze dried, my friends. So I have this beautiful little espresso cup that my partner made. Isn't it cute? Right. And I add the actual crystals into the bottom of the cup, cover the base, and then add water. I'm going to add hot water because I have it available. It's not required. I add in this tiny cup about half an inch, the level of half an inch of water. And I just let the coffee dissolve into itself. Here's the thing, coffee is used for a long time for sketching. It was an easy and affordable material at some points for people to practice with. So I learned about coffee in a coffee sketching class where we sketched regular things in the real world with coffee. How it's come into practice for my painting and how I use it is when I talk to you about the different weights of your paint and how you layer things, because successful layering is what makes painting successful. I got to get up again and I'm sorry about this, but I'm going to get a painting I just have been working on so that I can show you what this means. So my abstract paintings, I'm not doing big paintings right now. I'm only working on small stuff. My abstract paintings use a lot of layering. This is a lot of different materials layered in this painting. And they use this for a lot of different reasons. Like this is water soluble pencil. This is the matte paint. And you can see how it's not absorbing the light right here. It's actually, I mean, like it's just sucking up the light instead of reflecting it. Whereas you can see through the layers here. This is regular acrylic paint. This is like a soft body acrylic paint. And these are some water soluble items. So coffee, if I had used coffee in between this translucent layer and this matte layer, the matte layer would look like it was floating. So when I first started painting, I had just been a sculptor. I've been working in 3D the whole time. I wanted to find a way to make my paintings look like the layers were separated yet together. So coffee is fairly translucent. And when done between layers, it can actually hold one layer above another. It's a really interesting thing. It's a beautiful color. It smells really nice. And So I would usually start my paintings with a layer of coffee,
Oh
And
my
then-
God, I love that so much.
right?
And
This
that's
is-
just instant coffee.
This is instant coffee, isn't it
with
beautiful?
water.
It's
It's
gonna dry,
stunning.
it's gonna dry up quite a bit lighter. That's what makes it kind of special.
It's like burnt sienna
It is, but it's like
or natural.
touch, like if you barely touched it with burnt sienna. So it doesn't destroy color schemes. It doesn't change your color theory in any way. It's just this really beautiful little layer.
Astonishing. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Things to know about coffee. Coffee still is a food product, still has acid in it, right? This is paper, which is a tree product. So I gesso my paper with clear gesso. This is the only brand of clear gesso to use. Is this what you use, or do you use a different brand, Jean? Yeah.
That's what you use.
So
So,
I-
gesso, just so that you guys, so Stephanie, just in case you're clear, gesso's like a primer
It's a
that is
primer.
put on canvases, so that you're not painting directly on the cotton or the linen or the paper or whatever it
This
is.
one's a little different though. Do you know that this is considered just a medium?
No,
So this
because
is
it's
So I did some research into this. This is a great conversation. We're going to get super technical and nerdy this session, and I hope you all love it. And all you watching on replays, because turns out you do, I hope you love it too. So clear gesso, I think, is actual gesso mixed with some kind of medium to make it translucent. What it does is it dries on the page and it adds some tooth to the page. It's very interesting. The reason it's important with coffee is you want to seal in those acids so they don't destroy the other layers, right? So you don't have to seal your coffee every time you put a layer of coffee down. You just need to know that you're gonna have to seal your painting. Is everything okay? Oh yeah, you're gonna have to seal your painting. So a clear gesso on top is totally a reasonable seal. A spray acrylic seal is totally reasonable too. You can see how nice this is, Leah, now that it's drying up, and it's actually just, it makes nice marks. Everything about it's beautiful. I was going to show you when I talk about, like, if you think about, say, Leonardo da Vinci, he did some coffee sketches actually. When you want to talk about at the time where you had to make your materials versus now where you can buy them, or even now where it's expensive. You can use it like you do any other kind of watercolor. It's just this beautiful sepia toned. And at the time period, for a lot of paintings, you did everything in sepia tones first. It was considered to be the only color you were allowed to work with when you didn't have natural light. Whatever that means. It's crazy to think about some of the rules they had with art then. So I highly encourage you, Jean, if you haven't gotten some cheap ass coffee, to throw it in there sometimes. It's weird to work with, but it's really fun. That's my little tutorial on coffee. If anybody has any questions, just let me know. We're gonna actually work on top of this with some of our other things because I'm want to make sure I don't forget anything. Okay. So like Golden has come out with their fancy matte acrylics, Liquitex has started coming out with muted acrylics. This is more of a color thing. So this is a muted pink, okay? It's a soft body paint, like that first, like artist grade paint. If I was to choose two brands only to go with ever, it's Liquitex and Golden. That's in the United States. I can't speak about what's available in Canada and other countries. I love Liquitex's muted body colors. They don't have chalk in them like the acrylics do. They're just a different color scheme. It's like a darker color. They're for being a pink, right? It's kind of an interesting pink. It's almost like they took brown and added it to a bunch of stuff to see what colors that it could come out. It's just a very unique color. All of their muted colors are unique and interesting in the same way. This particular, it comes in flow, not a high flow. It comes in like a heavy bodied and then a soft bodied. I like the soft bodied. It feels like painting with butter, which clearly is something that I enjoy. I think that they're just a really beautiful creation. They're high quality, they're archival. Chalk, if you want to use chalk as your top layer, looks really sexy on them. I think that they do something similar to the matte paint though, because they absorb the light instead of reflecting it and making it shiny. So I think that that's a really unique and interesting thing. Here's the other tube that it comes in. Here's the heavy bodied. This is muted pink, which is in theory the same color. So this is the soft bodied version. It's really funny that the color, you guys can't really see this very well, but the color thing that they put on the tube is so far from the real color. Like, I want to write them a letter and be like, come on, give people a chance. Trying new things. What's nice about the muted, Liquitex muted, is that they come in, see how thick and like gooey it is, and in comparison, it's much darker than our like translucent versions. You don't see where the pigment breaks, which is what this texturing is. My rule of thumb is to start with your most translucent layer first. Start with your, well, that's a lie. Start with some translucent layers, end with some dark, thick layers, and then the last final touches is some watercolors just to brighten some spots, not to create new layers, but to bring some color out. That's just a general rule, throwing that out there as we're here doing this fun game. So now that we've got the basics of what types of acrylics are used by people, there is now a new, on top of the 5 or 6 different versions we've discussed here, there's one that I do not have because I'm not interested in being as messy as it requires. So if you've seen the way that cake artists paint, do frosting on their cake, there's now an acrylic body that is the same weight as frosting. So it literally molds up.
That just makes me happy.
Have you seen Gaffy paint yet? Oh my gosh, Leah, you might really love it. You use it in a like a frosting tube, and then actually sculpt with it.
Wow.
And then people who do florals with it and stuff like that have 3D.
So it's not heavy body. It's called something else. What's it called?
Heavier body than a heavy bodied paint. It's like if you took molding paste, which I don't have here, but is a medium you can add to paint, and just filled all of your acrylic tubes and mixed it up. I think it's insane. It's a little too dirty for me, but hey, if you guys, one of you goes out there, falls in love with it, it's a brand, it's Gaffeney, I think, Gaffeney, maybe the name of the brand. You could Google it. I would love to see what you guys could create with it.
I'm terrible at frosting cakes. That's all I have to say.
I'm not good. It's not right for me. Even though I used to be a sculptor, I was an installation artist, not the same thing. So I have 2 additives that I use. I use satin glazing liquid with acrylic paint to create what's called a glazing layer. I didn't realize, Leah, when you talk about glazing your paintings, that we were doing the same thing. I just use it differently than you do, which is pretty awesome. So Leah uses the same stuff, right? But do you use a matte or do you use a satin?
I use a satin usually, or a matte. Well, depending. Matte. Like, not the super glossy stuff because it looks terrible.
Not the super glossy stuff. This is the satin, not glossed. So it does 2 things for you. It extends the life of your paint by making it wet longer. So if you're doing some complicated layering, which somebody who's doing representational work is more likely to be doing, it's a great opportunity. It extends the wetness of your paint. Otherwise, what it does is preserves the pigment in the paint and makes it more translucent. Water actually breaks up your pigment, and super nerds, like super nerds, can tell you exactly how much water breaks up the pigment and makes acrylic paint no longer archival. This allows you to create, and I didn't do a very good job. I didn't add enough of the glazing liquid. It allows you to make super translucent layers that can go on top of other acrylic. I just started really using this in my paintings more after our conversation with Leah. It's been fun.
I love pink so much. Oh my God. Look at it, just like fixes everything.
It does. It's really nice. And you can actually, because you can do a 3-to-1 ratio of the glazing liquid to the acrylic paint and still keep the pigment and still keep it archival, you can make really see-through layers that just stretch. Leah does that because she puts it on top of work that already exists, and then you can see the color kind of reflected. It's really beautiful when done well. It can be really damaging when not done well as well.
True. Then again, you can always paint over it. Like you can paint over anything. So.
And then the other thing that I use is a wetting agent. Okay. It's a concentrated thing that reduces surface tension. So like I was just explaining, that water can break down acrylic if you over water your acrylics and make them no longer archival and break up the pigment. Wetting agent can be added to water to help your water not break up the pigment. So it's a 50-50 blend. I have this squirt bottle is known around my studio to be the squirt bottle that is 50% wetting agent and 50% water. Here's the problem with it. One negative thing that is a recent thing for me. So it puts particulates of the wetting agent in the air and it can make you cough a little bit. Happened to everybody, happens to some people. So know if when you use it, you're coughing, that is why you're coughing. But I had a painting teacher who really thought that it was really important that you not just use water on with your acrylic. It also helps you if you like to really make your acrylic translucent. It helps to preserve the body of the acrylic. It's kind of a weird little kind of trick that some people use to increase the longevity of their stuff. So acrylic, that's the acrylic spiel. When I talk about working with, we're going to let this one dry and we're going to come back to it. When I talk about working with water soluble materials, clearly watercolor is one of those things. Watercolor is cheap, it's easy to get your hands on, it's versatile, and it comes in pan watercolors and liquid watercolors. I personally prefer pan watercolors. You do not have to prefer pan watercolors. I'm going to show you a demo with both. Why am I demoing watercolors? Because I actually think it's one of the more finicky materials. I think you really got to get used to it. Let's change our water though. Let's not use gross acrylic water. Again, another hint for the trade. Change out your waters depending on your materials. So this is my watercolor pan. It is Prima brand, which also goes by, I think, Art Therapy or something. They're curated packs of 12 colors. They come in these what are called little pans. They come in their own individual little metal tin, but I bought the big Mondo Jondo. I put them all in that. And the reason I like this particular brand is that the pigment is always so bright. It's so dark. I feel sometimes almost like I'm using an acrylic. So I learned from a watercolor teacher, like what she calls the magic ratio. She uses liquid, which I'm gonna demo. I use a pan. One of my favorite colors is already on the pan. What's nice about watercolor versus acrylic is if your acrylic dries up on your palette, it's done. You can't reuse it. Watercolor, this is dried up watercolor right here. I can reuse it because the whole point is the water reinvigorates it, right? And that's what we're talking about, the issue with if it's already on your paper. So you want to mix, I think her term is 3-to-1. Brian's here. 3 parts water, 1 part pigment. So I always put a water packet right here. And then I bring my pigment in like this. You can see I'm like side swiping it. So I use scrapers, right? So how am I going to take my watercolor out of this dumb pan that I've got it in and make it and scrape with it? I physically pick it up with my paint, with my brush. I'll get usually I have a bigger brush, and I'll pull my 3 parts water, 1 part pigment mix onto the part of the paper that I'm starting with, and then use my scraper to use it so that I can still enjoy it. Liquid watercolor works very similarly. It's just a little easier for some people. This is my favorite, Shell Pink by Holbein. So I use liquid watercolors when I want to use a more pastel color. Because what I found is that pan watercolors, if it's pastel, it's waxy and it's really hard to get good pigment with. So if you want to use like this Shell Pink, you can see is a little more of a like a pastel-y color. It's a little easier with the liquid. What's also nice is that when this dries, it will dry hard like my pan, and I can continue to use it after I come back. So this is the same thing, 3 parts water, 1 part of the pigment. It just moves a little easier and quicker. This one is particularly delicate and beautiful. And you can get watercolors in metallics and pastels and fluorescents and any kind of color that you get acrylics in as well. I try to work with watercolors more and more because they're hard. They're finicky. What does it mean when they're hard? They break. What it's called is when you over water it. Watercolor can be applied in 2 ways. It can be applied dry on the paper, which is how I prefer to work with watercolors because I like bright pigments, or it can be applied wet on the paper, meaning that I'm putting this water down here. And anywhere that I put the water, when I add pigment to it, it is going to spread through that. So I'm just going to grab pigment straight from my pan and add it to this over here, and then slowly move it through the water that's already there. It's going to be a nice translucent layer when it dries. But it does this weird thing that I struggle with, which is, sometimes it splotches out, you'll see, and things like that. I like consistency. I like texture to be consistent. So I struggle with watercolor. However, as I mentioned before, I'm going to let this dry for a little bit, and we're going to pull back in to play our previous example. I like to use watercolor when I want to add a little bit of color to add something to give it more depth. This is a travel water brush, folds up into itself, fancy, rose gold, which is my thing. It's actually really lovely, and I should have bought the whole set. Instead, I bought the whole set for Audrey, and she's never used them. I like to make a top layer of bright orange. In particular, I think it's called pineapple orange, right? And especially like on these soft-bodied sections, they're really dark. It just adds like a color difference that you guys cannot see because the filming is bad. I promise I'm getting a new camera, and it's literally on the way. And then, and it's kind of touch-up layers. After this dries, though, only dry medium can go on top of it because any kind of wet medium will make it just bleh. So this will be like a top layer, and look, I'm putting it on top of my coffee. You can't see that. Let me move it over. Putting it on top of my coffee here just to add some little bit of color into this little section over here. There's quite a few colors that I threw. Hold on, sorry. Oh, God, give me a heart attack, Dion. Sorry, guys. There's a lot going on in my studio all of a sudden now that I'm it's okay. Dion's here. It's fine. So watercolor, sorry. Whew. So back to some of the other water soluble things that are fun. Jean, have you done watercolor pencils yet?
I have them. I've never used them.
Oh, you got to get into using them. They're fun. I have 2 sets, the same brand. This is Prima Marketing. It's technically, though, art something else. you know, most of my weird water soluble supplies come from them because they make great water soluble supplies. So I have 2 sets of these watercolor pencils. I love them. You can use them on their own or on top of other things. And then they are invigorated with water. So if you wanted to, you know, like I tend to do things like make little marks with them. I like that they're not overly waxy like other colored pencils because I really don't like colored pencils. I like that they have, again, solid pigment because this company really knows how to do pigment. And then what you can do is you can engage them by adding water. And what they do is they turn into a translucent layer of watercolor. What's really nice about them is once they dry, your original mark is still, the integrity of your original mark is still there. That's really what I like about them. And then I'll do something like this, sometimes spread out the water and mop up the liquid. And then you can see my original marks and they leave a nice little kind of translucent trail. These are the ways that you really work at building layers within your own abstract paintings. Another water soluble product that is new, which is crazy to people, this is water soluble oil pastels. They're waxy, but they're not as waxy as a wax pastel. This one's broken. They look like a pastel when you use them. You can smear them like a pastel, right? And then you can activate them with water. And they become the same kind of thin translucent thing that's over here. Again, protecting the integrity of the mark though. When this mark dries or is sopped up, you will see that the mark still exists. You can work it to where the mark doesn't exist if you don't want to have the mark there, but it's a nice way to build some interesting marks into your paintings. And you can see that it's so thick and it looks like oil pastel. So
Now, what happened, because it's oil pastel, if you put more water on top of it, it would still mush it. Yeah.
It'd still become like water-based. No matter what, it doesn't act like an oil pastel in that it just solidifies. It's this like solid material. It still acts like a water-soluble product. It's really interesting to layer with. So it used to be my hard and fast rule for people was use oil pastels on your abstract paintings. Make sure that they're the top layer. Make sure that you're doing like detailed mark making with them and things like that, because you can't paint acrylic on top of them and stuff like that. However, this is going to dry as a flat layer and I could paint acrylic paint on top of it. So it allows some more versatility there. I think they're really fun. They take some time to get used to. I think it's always what, you know, it's been my experience that each kind of material has its own place in your practice, meaning that I use my watercolor pencils for smaller marks. They tend to be like a 4th or 5th layer in the process. I tend to make my coffee and my water soluble graphite my first 2 layers, and then I'll use acrylic and I'll finish off with some watercolor if I want to make something look a little more nuanced. Some top layer stuff that is powdered, meaning that you can't put anything else really on top of it, is pan pastel. So I have a couple of pan pastels. I don't use a ton of pan pastel. You can use pan pastel on top of mineral paint, and then it becomes part of the process. I just like the chalkiness of it, and I apply it with a brush, usually like
a makeup brush, like it's blush or something.
Blush, exactly. The brushes that have sweeter, softer bristles are a better choice. They just tend to work better with it. And then it's kind of a delicate little chalky top layer. It's nice because it's matte. It absorbs the light instead of reflecting the light, you know. You can tell I really like this color of orange or whatever, because I use it in my watercolors a lot too. So it's nice. It's definitely like a broader stroked item, meaning that like you're not going to do like exact marks with it, but you can create some depth in there. And another thing that is really fun.
Now, how do you seal that?
So I seal all of my paintings with the spray acrylic.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's not a spray acrylic. I think it's called acrylic spray. Clear
Okay.
coat, what it's called. Clear coat is the name of it. So you can varnish too. The reason I don't varnish is varnishing is often put on with a paintbrush, which runs the risk of ruining parts of your painting. Because with abstract art, you have so many different types of material here. They don't dry and cure the way that only acrylic on a painting does. So if you only do paintings that use acrylic, varnishing is a great idea. If you use a lot of materials, a spray clear coat, which settles on top of your stuff, is a better option. If you don't have clear coat, a cheap hairspray that you can get at the dollar store is a great option. I used to travel with a kit that I used a lot of the pan pastels with. And so I would always just bring a tiny little travel hairspray and hairspray on top of it. And then it sets on top of it and seals it. Especially if you want to use the pan pastel, I don't know, in the middle of your process and you decide, oh, I'd kind of like to make a new swoop that goes over this here. You can use a hairspray, it'll settle on top of it and then you can paint on top of it. Does that clarify for you?
Mm-hmm. Perfect, yeah.
So I want to point out here, you've sat through this. This is the second time you've sat through this lesson, Jean. And look at how many more questions you're asking. This, you don't even know
Right, exactly.
what to ask the
didn't know
first
what to
time,
ask
right?
before.
Like,
Yeah.
So Stephanie, this is the first time for you. You'll find that we will periodically repeat this class because it's extremely helpful as you start using materials to learn how to like combine them.
And if you have questions about materials, feel free to ask me. I've used a lot of them. And just because what I'm sharing is my own personal collection and process doesn't mean it's the only materials that exist in the world. But I do know a lot of other materials. So that being said, it is a lot of information. It is the class that always kind of runs my voice out, but I think it helps us have conversations in later classes about materials. I want to just to make the statement another time, you are not required to have this many materials to be successful in abstract art or to enjoy my class. It's really hard to keep my class basic, and that's why I tell you what materials I'm going to use the day that we have the thing. But usually watercolors and acrylics and some pencils, you're solid.
Right.
We'll talk about pencils in a little bit. Okay. Another top layer thing that I think is really fun is called Pearlex. Pearlex can be added to gel medium. It can be added to water. I like to, again, weird girl over here with the dry brushing things on. I like to use this big old Sumi brush, all dried out and fluffy and terrible. I like to do this. Get the shiny metallic powder on it and then brush it on. It's going to make your surface metallic and add a little bit of color in the case of this one. I use only 2 colors really with my Pearlex just because of my own practice and the palettes that I have chosen for myself. I use this pinky rose colored one and I use gold. It comes in every color imaginable. It's so beautiful. The thing is, it does have powder on top, right? So you got to blow off your powder. But it's beautiful. You can't really tell that it's shiny, but it's shiny, which is why it looks like that in the video. And it adds another opportunity for you to play with light in your paintings. You know, as in representational work, playing with light is what makes things successful. And we use materials in abstract work to do the same kind of play that you might layer colors in representational work. So our last section before we can get to some fun exercises, basic exercises, but exercises is, well, I guess there's 2 sections left. Pencils. See, you can see where the water broke the pigment. That is what I don't like when we talk about why I struggle with watercolors. Pencils, graphite options. I use straight up black graphite. I use these little sticks here, but you can use it in any version you want it to. Good old fashioned grade school version, you know what I mean? Smears, it's really fun. I think it's really fun to put a gel medium with it. I'm going to use a clear one, which is weird. I think it's fun to mix in with a white gel medium. And I just think it's a fun, dirty first layer. It can be hard to have dirty first layers sometimes, but I think it's a lot of fun. And this just
it just depends on what you know, what your connotation of dirty is.
Right, that's true.
Right, like that black is such a beautiful color. I mean, dirty isn't what I would even, although it is true, like one ends up dirty, like because it gets everywhere, but it's so beautiful. Like
it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
It's really fun. And you know, sometimes it's good just to come in with your base layer and not care and just get in there and make it happen, you know. So I use like a hard pressed chalk. This is a white, it comes in little graphite squares. It's technically a graphite. It is really nice because for white, it makes really clear marks on top of other things, you know. And white marks can be really impactful when you use them. It's called Art Graph, which is an Italian, my understanding is it's an Italian graphite company. It is water soluble. It actually, you can add water to it and it becomes more of like a pigmented water and it smears. So you can really play with it. It's really fun. I tend to personally, in my practice, again, use it specifically for making white marks because I think that it's really bright. It's better than a white chalk. It performs better than any other options. I do sometimes use chalk pencils. Like this is a chalk pencil. It's a red chalk pencil. The difference with them is just the, you know, it's the shininess of the layer. It allows you to make some new marks. It's really interesting looking, you know. It's a color that isn't always translated in paint. But as for actual graphite, I do have all of the different types of graphite pencils. They're not necessary. This is my first Ticonderoga, a children's #2 giant pencil. That would be one of the top things in any kit I ever use. Just feels good. Because of the size of it, you don't feel the need to make perfect marks with it. It works well. It doesn't smear. Everything about it's beautiful. As for actual water-soluble graphite, I use the Prima Marketing ones because they go up to a 12B.
All right, check it out.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
My bad.
Does anybody know understand how the numbers on why there's numbers on graphite? In theory, it's the darkness of the graphite. So my 2B here would be my lowest, my lightest one. It's like a gray graphite. And then my 12B, which is not very common. I will tell you these melt as extreme heat. The 100-degree days melted them. And this is my 2B. You can see it's like clearly two different colors, right? So they have sizes all between. Most of them go up to 4B, sometimes an 8B. These are water soluble. Adding water makes them really beautiful when you want to talk about. I actually prefer water soluble graphite over the chalk, but you can see now that the chalk is drying how matte the surface is, right? How much the light is being absorbed by it rather than reflecting it. This one's really dark up here, you know, kind of.
Now, are these especially water soluble graphite, or is any graphite pencil water soluble?
Not any graphite pencil is water soluble. You have to make sure that it's water soluble. Art Graph, that other brand that I told you about, does have full-size pencils like these. They're water soluble. I have an Amazon list. It's not an affiliate list. It's just a list that I've created so that people can see the different types of materials that we use. And I'll put it in our chat so that if you want to take a look at some of these brands, you can, because some people feel specific about the brands. But the Prima just happens to do water soluble really well and happens to do this graphite really well. But it comes in lots of brands. I also have a powdered graphite that is water soluble. It comes in a can. It's not here right now because it's at home, but it comes in a can, like the coffee can, and then you can sprinkle it and add water to it. It's used for a lot of different things. I think it's a really messy material, and so sometimes I don't enjoy that. I have artist students of mine who love messy materials, so it really speaks to them. The last thing we're going to talk about, now that we've talked about materials, is tools. We're just going to go over a couple of options. I love flat things. Say you don't have the $12 for this catalyst and you didn't buy yourself a Nutrisystem weight thing, so you don't have this, but you still want a good flat surface. I always use old credit cards. Like this is like a stupid rebate card. No big deal. It's even still got the sticker because it's so dumb, you know, but it's a great flat surface for experimenting with flat surfaces. You can use employee cards. I've done that. Business cards, folded up pieces of paper are great options. I like to have hard bristled and soft bristled brushes as an option for myself. I like to have these ones. Don't even start that. Which are super soft, you know. Super mushy. I like these cheap paint ones, which are called chip brushes. They're going to give you texture that the other brushes don't have. They're going to have problems. These bristles are cheap. They're going to come off. They're going to fall all over the place. And then I like to use what would be considered a fine art brush. Has a better bristle. I like to use them all. I like to make messes of them. I like to make them into the ugliest thing, like I have wasted its time. Okay. Is there, oh, and paint pens. Sorry. I use Posca paint pens sometimes too. They're full of acrylic paint. I use them specifically for mark making or fine lines. This clearly I use this one in gold because I love gold. It's a big fan of mine. Okay. How's that? Now that all of our materials have been explained, do you have any other questions than the ones that you've asked? You've done
That's
a great
amazing. You
That's
just made like two beautiful paintings right in front of us
Like-
while explaining how to use the materials. That's gorgeous.
you know, that's real skill, I guess.
That's real. That's why we pay you the money.
That's the big bucks.
That's the big bucks.
So you guys have been through some more extensive exercises, but I always like to teach 3 beginning exercises, which I think you guys probably already know, but we're going to go over them today. And we're going to experiment with them today, and we're going to make it easy for ourselves. You need a pencil for the first 2, nothing more. So when we did that exercise where we changed each layer was a different type of thing, we used some of these skills. Sometimes people are just nervous with a white page. They don't know what their first layer is going to be. It's always coffee for me, but doesn't, that's not the same for everyone. So I like to introduce the idea of rage scribbling. Rage scribbling is also great if you are feeling nerves or jitters, or you are uncomfortable coming to the page. So I like to set a timer for myself because I will just rage scribble for the rest of my life. So you set a timer for yourself and essentially don't look at your page. What? Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So one of the challenges I've had is to buy the right paper. And
Yeah.
in the shop that is near my house, they sell one that is 200 grams per meter, I think, square meter, and the other one is 300. Which one would you use?
I would always go for the higher one.
I'll show you. This one. There isn't a massive amount of choice, but I just wondered what the right one is to buy.
So your mixed media, the nice thing is, let me tell you the difference between those two things just for how they're going to work for you. The mixed media is the water is going to sit on top of the paper a little bit more instead of being absorbed in like your watercolor one is. That's good and bad. It creates buckling in the paper, which can be difficult to work with. If you're willing to use a paper towel and sop up the water, it's fine. It's great for paint-based items like acrylic paint. The watercolor is nice because it will absorb the actual water, and you can use watercolor and you can use graphites that you're going to really mess up with water. I tend to choose a watercolor paper over a mixed media paper, but I've been known to use both. It's just going to be how wet is your paper getting? You're going to want a heavier paper like the 300 or the watercolor. Or if you're light touch, sometimes I'm light touch and I don't need that. If I'm just scraping in layers, thin translucent layers of acrylic, that light paper is not going to be a problem, but the watercolor will probably work better for you. If you're still having problems, find out if there is gesso there. The gesso will really help you because what it will do is it'll create a top layer on top of the paper before you start working. And that will allow the paper not to buckle or absorb so much water. So I'd work with the watercolor first, see how it treats you. And if you're still having problems, maybe consider a gesso. Okay, awesome. Excellent. Thanks for asking. I love those kind of questions. I have so much weird knowledge. Sometimes I feel like I'm not using it. Okay. Back to rage scribbling. Rage scribbling is about just getting it out. It's about not looking, you're not caring. We're not making anything beautiful. It's about feeling good. It's about letting go of the feelings, especially if you're somebody like me who has a lot going on in their life. You just got to get it out sometimes.
And not that any of you have any rage to be scribbling about. I know your lives are like easy, like, sugar, but like, try to imagine what it would feel like to be stressed, to have rage, to scribble out. Just kidding.
Like all of us are dealing with right now.
Right? Like the whole, yes.
Think about abortion in Texas and just get mad. It's a great emotional release. It also gives you some marks to start with, so you don't have to be worried about what am I going to do? Oh, how am I going to start this? Well, it's giving you some start here. We're going to re-go over the composition lecture in 2 weeks, I think. I'm going to do color next week and composition after that. And we'll talk more about like the dynamics of composition. But I love this as a first layer. It gets even weirder. If say you were to rage scribble, so this was my Ticonderoga. Speaking of, here's the difference between water soluble and not water soluble. This is my Ticonderoga. It might smear a little bit, but it's not going to modify. If you were to rage scribble with my water soluble crazies, this is going to be totally modifiable by water. I like to bring a big fat brush in. It's got some loose little guys going. I like to really put on some water on top with the water soluble graphite. It feels like a lot, right? It feels like so dark and ominous right now. And then I like to use a flat surface, like a flat scraper, to move the water around. And I'll usually get like a little puddle where it's kind of dark, and then I will sop it up. So you see those marks underneath it, Jean?
Mhm.
Those are the Ticonderoga marks. You can see that the water isn't modifying them. The layer on top of them is actually the water-soluble graphite. And then after this is kind of a good first layer for me. It's really some dynamic layers going there. You can pull up the excess water, right? And it's a little lighter, and it's going to just get lighter as it dries. So that's rage scribbling. Great first option. A secondary similar situation is, I'm still going to use this, don't you worry, is blind contour drawing. This is the thing. This is abstract art. You can still use representational items in abstract art. And a great way to do that is, this exercise where you're not going to lift, you're going to use a pencil. I'm going to use water-soluble graphite. I personally still like to use my water-soluble graphite for this one. I use my Ticonderoga for this one all the time. You can use a pen. You could use, a marker. You're going to choose a random object or person, it's really fun if you have somebody across that table from you, or you're working with somebody else that you draw their face, because they laugh really hard when they see what their face looks like in this exercise. You're not going to look at your paper. You're going to put your pencil down. You're going to look at the item, and you're going to take the time. This is a meditative thing, opposite of rage scribbling, still kind of meditative, where you're going to slowly follow the line of whatever it is that you're looking at. You're not going to ever lift up your pencil. And you're just going to take some breaths. You're going to slowly follow the lines of the object, or dog, or flowers are a great option. You're not making a drawing that's actually going to look like that thing. You're creating dynamic marks on your paper that are going to help open up your composition later. I'm drawing a silly, like, Yeti cooler we have from an event we did. It's full of beer. We don't drink beer. It's just a waste. And you know, with this, I pulled up my thing, but that's just because I had to fix my pencil. But with this, you can go over your marks. You can take the time to really explore the object. What gives the object shape interest? Where is there shadows? Where are there little weird things like little screws that might be there? Okay. Usually I do this for 2 minutes. That doesn't really look like a Yeti cooler, but you could see that I was following a Yeti cooler. But it gives you an interesting shape to start with. And then you can either color in the different sections, which is probably what I would do because that's something I'm into right now. Or, you know, like just start with a big color splotch, or because I use water-soluble graphite, you can go through and kind of blur it out a little bit. Some parts will stay dark and some parts will go light, and it kind of becomes almost this like graphite paint. And then it's going to dry and it's going to be a really thin layer. Okay. This is always a great first layer as well. You can let that dry and then, you know, alternate options on top of it. When might you do this kind of thing? I love to do it in front of the TV at night when my brain just needs to decompress from the stress of living as a human in the world. And then, you know, future layers could be, oh, I've got this brand new lid of this weird color. I'm just gonna, why not, right?
It looked like ketchup.
Yeah, and now we're just gonna roll with it, because why not? What have I got to lose? Okay, and then develop my layers from there. So that's blind contour drawing. So it's 4:36. I want you guys to pull out a fresh piece of paper. Doesn't matter the weight. I want you to take some kind of writing implement. Could be a ballpoint pen, which was my number one for a really long time. It could be a pencil. It could be a marker or a crayon. And I'm going to time you guys. And I'm going to have you do a 2-minute blind contour drawing. Okay. And then we're going to treat that drawing the way that we treated the 11 dots project, where that's our shape. And we're going to start to work on what can we do to make it look interesting and dynamic. I'm going to give Stephanie a little bit of time just to get her stuff. And then we'll do this. It's a really fun exercise. And I'm going to continue. I'm probably, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my blind contour on top of the blind contour I already have. Can I tell you though, it looks a little bit like a house on fire now, just because of the way that the top paint looks and the way that the blind contour looks.
My God, every time I walk away and come back, it becomes something amazing.
Doing blind contour drawing is a way of, you know, loosening up.
I can't wait to see what these guys do.
Me too. Now we actually get to start using things. So grab some graphite. Get your graphite in your hand. I'm going to get my phone's timer out. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. 2 minutes is a long time, guys. I want you to choose something that you're going to look at that is going to feel like you can look at it for 2 minutes. Every time I tell people it's 2 minutes, they think it's way shorter than it is. Okay. Are you guys ready? Yes, both of you look ready. And I'm starting the timer and go. We're at 51 seconds in case you needed to know.
Does drawing on the tablecloth count?
Right, I always end up off the paper too. I use a weird silicone mat, like a silicone cutting board underneath my paints and stuff. Last 10, 12 seconds, folks. You're almost there. You brave, brave souls. And done. What do you think of your masterpieces?
It's
Are they
fucking
beautiful?
brilliant.
Oh my God, I love both of them. Look at them. So now the fun part begins. You use some kind of coloring implement, whether it's colored pencils or acrylic paint or watercolor, and take your drawing and see what you can make out of it. This is the part where, you know, materials become really interesting, and how you use your materials becomes really interesting. I'm going to try and use more coffee in mine this time. I figure I'm already here doing it. And we'll work on this for a little while and see if we can turn these weird little contour drawings into masterpieces. And I'm going to get a throat lozenge because I have a wimpy voice. So give me 1 second and I'll be back. I got myself some real paper towels. That's helpful too.
Is that an old credit card you're using?
That is it's a like a rebate card. You know
Nice.
how that, yeah. It's a great opportunity. Also another thing that Audrey likes to make fun of me for using is a small protractor.
So nerdy. I love it.
Audrey makes fun of me because I carry it with me. I got this new fancy phone case. You can see where it adds like a wallet to the back of your cell phone.
Nice.
So I put my protractor in there. She makes fun of me. What can I
Love
say?
it.
Now let's see if I can turn this Yeti cooler into some kind of something. This is the part where abstract art really is just so much fun, and it's just such playful. which is a big focus of my life this year. More play. I'm gonna mute myself for just a little bit. I have to talk to somebody real quick and I'll be right back. I'm gonna fix my phone.
Great.
Thank you for your patience. Getting some things sorted out at work. This is multi-dimensional life I live here. I've got some really funny shapes. Some of them I really need to fix because I really don't like shapes that look too phallic in my paintings. Oops, I hate when I do that. Mine looks a little bit like a weird cave. I got a weird cave situation going on here. Sometimes my paper towel becomes a work of art of its own. got little marks, little like tie dye going. My dog is for sure that we are starving her.
Oh, you're a horrible, horrible dog mother. I bet you haven't fed her in weeks.
In weeks.
Yeah, my cats haven't been fed in weeks.
Yep.
You're constantly telling me that.
She did not like our vacation time off. She did not like being home. She was not a fan. She was like, I really prefer people.
Damn. That's beautiful.
My house on fire. No, I'm kidding.
It's beautiful. Gosh, it's
Definitely.
amazing what a little bit of teal will do.
Especially on like just a weird orange page.
Yes.
How is your commission coming, Leah?
The big one.
Yeah.
I think I've got about 6 more hours on it. It's mostly done. But it's just everything takes longer. Here, I'll send you guys a picture.
Do you feel like you're just never going to paint the St. John's Bridge again?
I wish I could say that was true, but I know it's not. I know people will want it. But here, hold on, let me get it.
I just sent mine.
Yeah. This is my favorite part of the day.
Oh, Jean, that's lovely. That's really cool. That is different mark making than I've ever, that's very nuanced mark making. I like it.
Oh, I love it. It reminds me of like it's alive, like a plant. And I'm into
It is. It's a snake plant in a blue pot, but then
There it is.
I started just smearing it around.
So there it is.
So that glowing background is going to go through the rest of it, I take it?
Well, I'm gonna push it back. So yeah, I'm gonna put gray. So you can see all that green is like way too prominent right now, but I want it to be green on the right side coming through. So there's a gray I'm going to mix that will go over the top of it, but let some of the green come through and kind of neutralize it. I know I spent 5 hours putting on those like cables.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have drawn the freaking bridge before. It is quite
It is a thing.
That's amazing, Leah.
Oh my God. Every single like turret. And you know, when it's as big as this, which is 8 feet, you can't like kind of, you know, when it's smaller, you can sort of fudge things out, but you really can't do that when it's that big. So I'm like,
Are you using a ladder to get up to the top?
only to the top. It's on the ground. So I can reach, actually, as you can see by the way it's set up, I can reach most of it. Most of it is kind of ground level, or kind of even more uncomfortably. I have to actually sit on the ground and kind of hunch over. At one point I was laying down and going like this. It's a whole different rhythm. You know, like I kind of take every area, you know, next time I go, I'll be dealing with the sky. The following time I'll be dealing with that background, that sort of blue and sort of orangey background. And then I think the final time I'll go in and try to add some of these very bright, lovely tree branches that are coming across the front on the bottom right. But like each time it takes, it just takes so long. It's just so much bigger than anything I've ever painted before. But it's fun. It's fun. It's its own thing. Hi, Chris. That's beautiful. What? Oh yeah, I'm painting it in their living room. There's
I know, but are they allowed in the living room?
Oh yeah. I mean, they're walking back and forth. They're in a big open plan house. There's no escaping. I'm like their very slow, very boring reality TV show. They're awesome. I mean, they're lovely people, so I can't complain. But oh God, Carissa, I love that piece.
It really looks like a cave. I'm gonna take a picture of it.
Plato's Allegory of the Cave. That's what it
Yeah.
looks like. You know that story?
Of course.
No.
The allegory. Oh, this is a wonderful story. I think everyone should know this story. In Plato's Allegory of the Cave, there are a group of people that are that are in a cave, and they are facing with their backs to the door of the cave. So they cannot see that there is a door to the cave. And not only that, they are chained, like, so they can't really turn around. Or actually, in some versions of the story, they're chained. In some stories, they just are looking into the cave, and they just don't even think about turning around. And then, oh, coffee. And then behind them is a fire that is, dancing on them. So it's what they're seeing as their reality is these sort of shadows on the wall in front of them that is created by the fire behind them. And Plato is the philosopher king. He turns around, looks, and says, "There's a fucking door." And he goes outside and he goes back to tell everybody what's going on. And they're like, "No, that's not, I am like in this cave, like looking at this wall with these shadows. That's real. It's not, this is not, that could not possibly be real." What?
What do they think the shadows are?
They think it's real life. That's life. That's their entire experience of the world. It's that.
Oh, and
So
I see what he's saying there.
Yeah, he's saying, turn around, go outside. He turns around, he goes outside, he comes back, he tries to tell people what he's seen outside. They cannot relate to it at all. They're like, nope, it's just these shadows on the wall.
And
Sometimes,
I guess, like it's meant to be commentary on life.
yeah, and how we think things are real and we don't really understand, right? Like we are what we see.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's one of my favorite stories. God, that's really beautiful, Krista.
Well,
I kind of want it. I want to buy it.
It's going to be nice when it dries up too, because it's got some good textures that will come through. It won't be so like shiny. It's a weird one. I once did a painting about Pandora's box that was pretty similar. And I don't mean a drag queen.
Right. I'd like to see that.
We've
Anyway, that's what your painting made me think of, is Plato's Allegory of the Cave.
that's how abstract art is, the whole intention there. Meant to think something a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Now I'm just gonna muck up all of these things since I have all this material out, right?
Yeah.
Do it. Oops, that's not what I wanted, but that's fine. Well, it's almost like your painting that you're working on is like a mural. It's like that large,
It is that scale of thing. Except that it can be, moved up and down and yeah. So I'm thinking if I can get in 2 more sessions this week, I can probably finish it. I just need to, that's lovely. Yeah, we'll see. It's coming. It's an interesting experiment for me. And do I want to do more of these?
I was just gonna say, you're like, do I want to work this large?
They're laughing. They're like, we don't know if you do, Leah. I spent a lot of time looking at the painting and talking to it like it's a naughty child. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I think that a lot of artists can attest to that feeling of like, this expression is like your child and you are, trying to will it into being almost. There are all these weird things drying. Dry faster. this is when you don't want to be using your slow drying additives to your paint. You just want it to dry.
So you guys got the new schedule, right?
It's basically the same, isn't it?
It's the same, the subjects have changed.
Right, right.
So Thursday will be, so Wednesday is going to be a class called Drawing to Painting. Thursday is drawing faces, but I'm going more remedial, so I think it'll be good.
Are you trying to say don't panic, Jean? Is that what
Don't
you're-
panic. I think you're really going to like it. I've been really thinking about it. I'm like, okay, hang on. Like, what's going to be the most helpful here? So we're really going to focus mostly a little bit on structure and then just doing eyes, nothing else, not even necessarily a reel.
And you're drawing, not painting, so that's.
We're drawing, yeah, although, yeah, that's right. So we'll just talk about face forward structure and where things are on the face, and then we'll talk about 3/4 faces, and then we'll just work on eyes, which is, and maybe noses if we have time, but I suspect we'll be caught up in like practicing eyes, because I realized we never really practice features very much. So people
No, we did
just,
like one class on an eye and then the next week it was something else.
that was it. So I thought like this week, we're just going to really focus on features and not really trying to get the whole person yet. Like we'll spend January sort of bisecting the face right into pieces so we can work them out. And then we'll move into working with actual photographs and of people. So I think you'll like it. I think you'll find it like, I was like, if I was going to break this down differently, how would I do it? We're all thinking about it. I'm talking to Marie as well. She and I are both getting together to kind of hash out what are the things that people really need practice with, and how can we offer that differently? So this is going to be a good.
There's a lot of mixed media tutorials on faces. And the only reason I bring them up is because I think that mixed media artists, I don't want to say lazy, but they're rudimentary often.
Mhm.
You know, they're not trying to make it something interesting.
Mhm.
But I think that it would be worth seeing what parts do they focus on, because that's going to be clearly where people need the most focus, right?
I agree. And, you know, actually, one of the last things I did in the last portrait class last year is we did a mixed media portrait, and it went shockingly well. Like everyone was really, here, I'll show you mine and you can see it. Like,
yeah, I mean, I have taken classes that were mixed media portrait classes, and they feel more accessible to me because they aren't, you're not trying to be realistic. There's a lot more play.
yeah, and you can play with color a lot more. So if you can see this was the portrait. So we drew from a photo.
Oh yeah.
But then we played with the color, but we still worked with lights and darks, and people loved it. And then I went back over with a charcoal pencil, and I was like, oh my God, this is really fun. Because at some point, it's like a quicker, easier way. Here, I'll take a picture of it, because I thought it would be hard, but like it really was kind of rewarding.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I have so this class will kind of move us in that direction. I think we'll be spending more time with all the different things. And yeah, somebody did it with an animal, you know, you don't even have to really do it with
Human.
Yeah, it was really fun.
I think that's kind of the hard part about human bodies, is they are very technical ratios and things like that. And
It's hard. Yeah. Likeness is tough.
Yeah. So
But that's lovely too, and totally different.
totally different. It's going to dry up a little bit. So this is the white paint with the coffee and the graphite, and then I'll pulling some
Look at
back.
how it dries kind of grayish in places and
Yeah, and it's
brownish in places.
Flat gray. It's really interesting. Okay. Yeah. So hopefully it dries soon, and then I'll be able to work on some of its upper layers. This is like this one's doing this thing that I'm not always a big fan of, that kind of textured paper does when you scrape on it, is that you get these like little dots and things like these textures that are not really always what I want. But they're, you know, like anything else, it's always a good problem, right? Good problem to be solved. This new scraper is very interesting and weird, and I'm kind of into it. Fits in your hand nicely. It's really meant to clean food off of a food scale, but you know. Oops. Let's not get paint on my new phone. So has anybody set any like resolutions or got a new word for the new year, or even resolutions not to set resolutions?
My word for the year is survive.
Hey, solid choice. As long as you make it to the end, you've completed it.
Exactly.
Mine's rising.
Well, that's a good one.
Rising. I
It
like
wasn't
that.
originally going to be rising. It was originally, I think, going to be listen. But in the last couple of days of the year, we were dealt some fun extra challenges, and so it's going to be rising now.
Yeah, but that needed to happen.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
sorry it happened quite as quickly as it did, but that definitely needed to happen.
Real.
Let's remember we're being recorded.
Well, also rising is much less passive than listening.
That's the
That's
thing.
right.
Well, it's kind of the reason though that I was choosing listening is that I am kind of, my intention originally, I mean, best laid plans. My original intention was really to have kind of a passive year for the most part, just to be working, you know, working on Portland Open Studios and teaching and moving the gallery forward, but not like reaching so much with my career and stuff like that. But really what I did was I lightened my load to make room for other loads. So, you know, it happens.
Yeah.
There are all kinds.
There's no end to it.
No, that's the thing, right? Well, and that's like the whole concept of like energy is that you make room and it will be filled.
Yeah. So Jean, yours is survive. Stephanie, what's yours?
Oh, I made lots of resolutions last year, didn't achieve any of them. So this year the bar will be very low.
Appreciate that.
I'm thinking something like putting anti-aging cream on my face every night.
I love it. I fucking love it.
My routine, working on my morning routine was the only thing I was focused on. It was like my primary goal for December was like,
Yeah.
fix
Have
my
your
routine. Like it makes a difference in how you feel. I actually set one, I guess you could call it a resolution, which is I'm going to try to run or walk 1,000 miles this year.
Oh, so how does that, what does
Well,
that turn out a day?
Well, technically it's about
Oh, gee.
2.85 miles a day. But actually I got really lucky that somebody made a spreadsheet that broke it down by month. And that's a little bit easier. So it's 80 miles this first month. You know, it's about 20 miles a week, depending. It's the reason it's walk and run.
Right. Jesus, look at what Jean did on her second one. It's a totally properly abstracted version of the first one. That's awesome, Jean. It's awesome.
Properly abstracted.
Properly abstracted.
I didn't know there was an improper way to abstract. but-
There is no proper way.
Wait, is this the same thing? You just went over it, or did you do a new one?
I did a new one, but it was all the same color
Same
palette.
subject. Yeah, and I can also
Yeah.
see sort of same subject, but like super. I love those light areas. Oh my God, I love that there's just a few
The little mark
leafy
is
green.
my favorite part. The little black marks.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's great.
Favorite part. I think they add a lot, you know. The
Uh-huh.
subtle marks are generally what gets us the farthest.
Right.
It's just learning how to create them that becomes kind of the challenge. Really, it's just a lot of playing around. Oh, I pulled out the food and stuff.
right.
Dogs need their snacks.
On my rage scribbling,
Yeah.
it's I didn't think it was water soluble pencil, but it's kind of water dissolutioning. Dissolving, that's the word.
Well,
It's cool. No,
well, now you know.
yeah.
That's the exciting part, right? This is such a like weird little piece now, you know, just becoming itself. Doggy dinner time.
Oh, finally, she won't starve.
Yeah, well, you know, takes a lot to keep that cute little body going forward. She's been really cute lately. She's been really working on making Audrey really love her. Doing really cute things, crawling into bed with her and like laying on her shoulder.
Snacks or patchouli?
Patchouli, snacks.
Oh, patchouli. Snacks is already Audrey's. Patchouli is making her,
Making her move.
he's making her move.
Yeah. No, you're not. You're fine. I mean, your face
Hi.
is, but it's.
Hi, Audrey. Hi. Did you, are you over like December yet? Or is it still?
Started throwing again yesterday. She's
Jesus
been off
Christ.
for a
Oh
week.
my God. Oh my God.
She's got a 200 mug order and
Ah,
so back to business.
candles.
She had all of the meetings about the new coffee shop today. So
That's exciting.
yeah, she was out there making it happen. We may get lucky enough to have sourced a rebuilt machine, and that would be really helpful to us. Snacks, where are you going?
That's really exciting, you guys. You're gonna have fun with that.
I think so.
Also, there's a super high profit margin in coffee shops. Super.
Yeah.
That's why there are so many.
That's
Yep.
why there's a Starbucks on every corner.
I mean, they make a lot of money.
Yep.
They're very cheap to produce versus what people will pay for it.
Yep. And we, because we don't use hemp milk, like the Coast Guard wouldn't go to Coffee or Waterfall. A lot of the offices around here won't send orders in because he uses a lot of hemp milk. So those places will be great markets for us. We're across from City Hall. So as long as we can get the City Hall people, we'll be solid. Man, this is like a bright ray of sun. Can you
It
tell?
really is through a very gray day.
Yeah, missing some sunshine here. So many people are on vacations in places that have sunshine.
And I'm just mad that it was 60 degrees on Christmas here in New York City.
Oh, you're
60 degrees.
kidding.
You people hogged all our snow.
We took your snow. We totally did.
Well, you know, it's gone, but we didn't want it.
That makes it even worse.
We don't have the structures to deal with it. It
I
shuts
know.
everything down. We had to, I think the third day, walk down to get some almond milk. And I was very concerned about hurting myself just because everything's on hills here.
Right, it's slippery.
Yeah, and frozen. Nothing like a good session of painting to get you all messy. Okay. Next week, we're going to talk about color. We're going to go back through that stuff. We're going to have some new exercises about color, I think, but we'll see if I can
Exciting.
get them together. Oh, man. Look at this little this little coffee splotch waiting for some friends.
Nice.
Aw.
Oh, I was going to talk about sketchbooks real quick. That's great. Let me talk about sketchbooks real quick. So, like I said, I can be wooed by sketchbooks because they're pretty. And these are 3 different types of sketchbooks. They all have very radically different uses and helpful points. But when we talk about Stephanie's question about paper, the paper in your sketchbook is really important because it determines what you can do in your sketchbook. You can see that I use this sketchbook a lot with paint because it's all over it. This is a really large sketchbook. It's got a 90 weight. It's a Strathmore. I have to be really careful when I paint in it. This is acrylic paint, but it's kind of thin layers that are applied with a like spatula, and I have to keep them very light because it just doesn't have the physical capacity to hold up to much more. I use my sketchbooks to work on a lot of different compositions, meaning like even like things like this where I taped it to try and see how that would look with like more white, more negative space. And then I do a lot of collaging in some of the thinner papered sketchbooks, lots of different weird exercises. I am a sketchbookaholic. I do a lot of this, you know, I will create 4 squares inside of my sketchbook. But I also have, like this one is a pretty good watercolor sketchbook. It's pretty thick paper, like it could withstand just about anything I did to it. What's also kind of interesting about this sketchbook is it's not attached to the front page. So it lies flat. It actually lies flat, which is really unusual for sketchbooks. You don't have to have a binder clip to make it lie flat. One of the downfalls though is that the pages come out, and if you're like me, I don't always like my pages to come out. I kind of like them to stay together. But this is I think probably a 200-pound watercolor sketchbook that we got in at the store. And then I even have this sketchbook, which I just like the size and beauty of it, but look how thin the paper is. I kind of like that it's cream paper. And similar to the scenario with the other sketchbooks, it's about using them for what you can use them for well. These are like mark making exercises that are really light. Again, more paint, but super light, no watercolors, no, and I work in them all kind of simultaneously. So you'll see things that are similar color schemes because as things are drying, this is one of my favorite sketches in this one. And it actually was done co with another sketch that's also equally as beautiful. And then I usually have a 4th sketchbook, which is paper that I've made. Not the paper itself, but I've made the sketchbook.
Right.
You know, this class might be an interesting opportunity to get a sketchbook and just work on the exercises in the sketchbook. You just want to make sure that if you get a sketchbook, you don't get a drawing sketchbook, you get a painting sketchbook.
A mixed media sketchbook. Stephanie, that's beautiful. It makes me think of underwater. You guys are killing it today.
Oh, I love that, Stephanie.
Isn't that gorgeous?
What great
Oh,
color.
I love that in this class, everything is just appreciated for what it is.
It really is. But I mean, these are great. This is great stuff you're doing.
But also, Stephanie, you do produce a higher quality beginning abstract artwork than I have seen with some other people.
I would say that's true. I would say that's true. It seems to come to you naturally.
Jean's also feeling herself. And so every class, her work is getting substantially better. And
this one is driving me crazy, Jean. I love it. I am like, your second piece is like nuts. It's so good. It's so good.
Here's my rage scribble one. I just sent it.
Let's send it.
the rage scribbling one. So it's a great opportunity. Oh, I like the darkness. The rage
Me
scribbling.
too. That's how Jean, that's what you mean when you said survive. That's what this looks like to me. Wow.
It's a hard time right now.
It's
not going to get any easier. It's not going to get any easier. You know what I mean? We're just kind of.
No, it's gonna, continue to suck.
Yeah, we're just in a spot, It's hard to, going back to even what Stephanie said about goals, it's hard to accomplish goals when no systems are like reliable.
Right. Right. How do you even evaluate?
Right. They
What
tell you
is like
SMART goals. Isn't that it, right? Like measurable. Well, how do you measure the impact of the pandemic?
No.
Well, it's been really lovely today, everyone.
Yeah, we're coming towards the end of class.
So if you have any last questions or queries, this is the time.
Or questions about what we'll be doing in the next few weeks. Maybe this is a good time. I'd also like to remind you, go ahead, Stephanie.
So I have a request. I thought in the first class that I did, but I was really fascinated with using this thing to put the colors on, and then I started mixing them. And I don't know like how many other things there are you can use to put paint on and then put over the paper, but I think it would be really cool if we did more things that we could use instead of pencils.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got it.
Stephanie, I love yours. This is so cool. The movement in it makes me want to dance.
I think this is going to be a great year, ladies, for art. It's going to be good. It's going to be really good. So just to review, there are 7 classes a week. Jean and Stephanie, you are welcome to come to any of them. I think I've sent you the new schedule, so you guys will have it. There's a class every day except Monday. Tuesday is abstract art. Wednesday is now a class called Drawing to Painting, where you can draw and then just finish your drawing or add paint to a drawing. So we'll be spending a fair amount of time drawing, but then there'll be a little flexibility on how people finish their drawings with painting if they want to. And then Thursday is going to be drawing faces. Friday is going to be a class called Painting Made Easy, which is a lot like drawing to painting, but we'll be focusing more on the painting aspect of it as much as the drawing. Drawing Made Easy is on Saturday. Pastel Landscapes with Marie Sangath is on Sunday, and then my oil and acrylic painting studio is in Sunday afternoon. And then starting in February, we're going to have a new class on Saturdays after beginning drawing Made Easy, called Try It. And that's going to be a community. So Jean, I'll be in touch with you because we're going to set a schedule, and I'd like your class to be one of them.
Okay.
So this is going to be like a kind of more artsy craftsy project. Although Marie and I thought we might take the first class to teach like kind of a how does color work across mediums. Like she'll do pastels and I'll be doing paint. How do you mix colors? How do you like play with them? But it's really designed to be, and Jessica Pryor just suggested an amazing lecture on turning, anyway, we don't even have a title for it yet, but it's a series of exercises designed to help you really understand 3D on a flat surface. So, but it'll also be stuff like making earrings. Jean wants to do a making earrings class. We're going to do a class on painting jars. We're going to do a class on how to make cool patches for your clothes if you have a hole in your clothes. Like, I want somebody to teach how to knit a washcloth. So we'll be doing kind of more fun things. And if you in the community want to teach something, you can also teach it. So it's kind of a little bit more of a community-led class. It is free for everybody. And that will start in February. So we'll have more on that later as it gets going. I'm kind of excited about it.
Yay.
Good, yep. It's gonna be a good year. Next week, we're gonna color theory. The week after, we're gonna do composition, and
And then
then
voice, right?
a visual language.
Visual language,
So,
right?
February, and visual language, Stephanie, in visual language, I'll talk more about other implements you can use for mark making, how to do more mark making and that kind of stuff for you. But so hopefully I can address some more fun things for you to try that you have hanging out, right? And then, but the other two classes, the color theory class and the composition class, are really meant to help you be more successful when you're making decisions with your painting. So hopefully we'll see you guys. This has been fun. It's always one of my favorites to do. How can you not love playing with weird materials? And I guess we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, next week, same
great
bat
week.
time.
And that channel.
Happy
Bye,
New Year,
guys.
everybody.
Good to see everybody. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Krista.
Thanks, bye.